Guys, how you going? Today on BKR Sport, it is time to talk about the Sydney Roosters in 2024 and if this team is going to get back to its competitive nature that we've seen pretty much forever. You know, there really shouldn't be a time in the Sydney Roosters history that they aren't very, very competitive, especially with Trent Robinson, especially with the team that they do have on paper. This is a team that every single year we expect to be at a very, very quality level, and in recent years, since 2019, they really have disappointed greatly, and they really haven't been able to hit that next level that we all know they can achieve. And obviously, you know, teams aren't going to just consistently win year after year after year. But then again, they kind of do, because the Storm have been very competitive for a very long time. Obviously, you've got the Penrith Panthers, who have won 3 years in a row now, and been 4 grand finals in a row. The Roosters have been dominant over the last 20 years or so. But with that being said, they really have started to kind of fall off the wagon a little bit, and just be one of those teams in the middle that can get those wins against the big teams, can lose against the smaller teams, but just not overall be there when it counts in the end. Every single year, we always say the Roosters, okay, they're going to be the team that really improves this year. Every single year, we can clearly see that this Roosters team has such a phenomenal team list. Like, let's go through the predicted team list for 2024, and this is kind of what it always is like. You know, it's not like the Roosters don't have a team list that is of this quality nature every single year, but just for some reason, things go wrong, things go a bit awry, and it doesn't work out. So, you got James Tedesco here as the fullback, with Suaalii and Dom Young on the wings. Obviously, Dom Young coming across from the Newcastle Knights, which is a massive addition there. Joseph Suaalii, we're more than likely going to be seeing him, well, he will be leaving at the end of this year, but for the time being, obviously, he is on the wing, and it is quality. In the centres, Billy Smith and Joey Manu, and they've got such good quality depth in the centre department as well. You got Luke Keary as the 5'8", Sam Walker as the halfback, with Warrior Hargraves and Lindsay Collins front row. Brandon Smith is the number 9, with Nat Butcher and Suya Wong as the back rowers, and I'm really expecting Suya Wong to have a massive year this year. We saw in the finals last year what he can achieve, especially in that game against the Cronulla Sharkies. I think he scored the try that took the lead in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Can't really remember, but the point of the matter is that Suya Wong is going to have a massive year, and then Victor Radley as the lock, and then on the bench, predicted-wise, is Sandon Smith, Spencer Leniu, Siteli Tupouniua, and Terrell May. So, like, every single part of that team has the name, and, you know, you start to think, okay, well, is it just like a Broncos effect, right, where, you know, people just want to kind of push these names because of the club they play for, because we've grown up with these teams being so successful. You find that with the Broncos, that regardless of who they are, they usually get a really, really positive promoted rap in the media and by the fans, because they've grown up with the Broncos being so successful throughout time that regardless of kind of they know that player or not, they will give them a positive rap. And we've actually spoken about that in a couple of team makers so far. And I guess that kind of is the same thing with the Roosters, where because the Roosters have been so competitive for so long, people just expect that whoever the next talent is that's coming up through the system is going to be quality and is going to be premiership caliber worthy. And I'm not saying that that's not necessarily the truth, but I'm just saying that people don't know what they're talking about, but will still lean with the, okay, this team is going to be the best in the comp this year. I think my main concern here, and probably my only concern with this, no, there's 2 concerns here that I'll get into with this team list, is one, I don't think the halves are as confident as you would necessarily like. I think Luke Keary, obviously, his best days are behind him. I think that he has been a phenomenal half in his time. When he was at the Rabbitohs, obviously won a premiership, has won multiple premierships with the Roosters as well. But obviously, he's no fresh young pup anymore. He is starting to get on in age, and obviously does need Sam Walker to really turn it up a lot to help him out, right? Because he doesn't have that same pace that he once did. And Sam Walker doesn't really have that confidence behind him as well. We saw him get dropped last year, obviously got injured when he got dropped, and the Roosters wanted to bring him back, but he was injured, and then he couldn't come back for a while. It was an absolute mess, right? But Sam Walker is obviously the 7 that they want there at the Roosters. But Queensland, obviously, that was what they wanted as their halfback going forward, and now there is a bit of a confusing nature about where Queensland goes into the future, and that isn't a good sign for Sam Walker, because it means that although they were pretty much guaranteeing that Sam Walker was the replacement for Cherry Evans once he retired, now it's a lot more up in the air. You know, it's a lot more open now. And these 2 halves, there's just a little bit of an irk around them where you just don't know if they're going to be able to really take this team next level to be back into the competitive nature. And then I think the next kind kind of point of concern would be in that hooker department with Brandon Smith. And we all know how phenomenal Brandon Smith has been in the past when he was at the Melbourne Storm, obviously for New Zealand and whatnot. But it just hasn't been the same. I believe it. I've said this for a very long time that he is a lock. He's a pure lock. I'm not a big fan of him in the hooker department. Obviously, Harry Grant took over him. But then again, Harry Grant would have taken over anybody because he is the best hooker in the competition. That's just a guaranteed fact. So Brandon Smith obviously kind of lost that 9 role there, was more of the 14, 13 kind of role at the Melbourne Storm, and then has come across into the Sydney Roosters and just wasn't great last year. He just wasn't fantastic at all, really, and was a bit more detrimental than a positive, in my personal opinion. That doesn't mean that he can't get back to the level that we have seen him before. He is a great player, but it just doesn't seem like it necessarily is his position. He has also lost out that 9 role for New Zealand. Jerry Marshall-King is the 9 there as well now, and there's no guarantee that he even gets the 14, especially with the Kieran Foran, and, look at Kieran Foran's age, look at Foz's age, and yet he's still holding out Brandon Smith there. So, yeah, it's a bit of a concern for Brandon Smith at the moment. Can he get back to where he was? Absolutely. Are these halves good enough to turn it up and really give this team a solid direction going into 2024? Absolutely. But it is worrying that the only parts of this team that I really am not a massive fan of right now is 3 members of the 4-person spine. 3 of the 4-person spine, and those 3 positions are not the fullback, right? So those 3 positions are the ones that are directing the play. So that is the issue that I see going into 2024, is that they've got great back rowers and great depth back rowers as well. Nat Butcher and Sue Wong, massive. Victor Radley, massive. Not the player he once was, but I do think that he is adjusting to the game as well. Obviously, can't be as aggressive as he has been in the past, but I do think he's adjusting into the game, and I love the 4-pack alongside Lindsay Collins and Jared Warrior-Hargraves, and then you got Spencer Leniu and Tupanua, Terrell May come off the bench. Like, that's a massive 4-pack, and that's great. But you as well, and the 4-pack is going to get into the attack in 20, and then you've obviously got the back line there that can score you the tries, right, and to get you those points. But it's only as good as your halves and your hooker who are directing the play and know what they're doing. So Brandon Smith needs to have a massive year. Sam Walker and Luke Keary need to have a massive year. And also, actually, there is the concern of Tedesco as well, actually. So the entirety of the spine has a bit of a question mark. Although they've got the names, the entirety of the spine has a bit of a question mark because James Tedesco, we have seen that regression. And although he still is playing at that Australia level, he's playing Origin for New South Wales, and he is still the captain here for the Roosters, James Tedesco has seen that regression, and I've been defending this man all throughout last year, and I will continue to defend him to say he's still in the quality ranking. Like, you can't say he's going to do the job. You can't say he's not that great. He's got the backing there, and although it may be kind of resembling the name of James Tedesco that really does push that along as well, Tedesco is still quality. He is still doing what he needs to do at a quality level. I don't believe he's in the elite tier, but we will do the fullback rankings with Clarkey when it does come up. So, yeah, there is that regression there. So, is this Roosters team, outside of the 2-3-5, I think the Roosters are the complete opposite to the Melbourne Storm, actually. And I do a lot of these, when I do these I guess, preview videos for teams, I do a lot of comparisons. You see the Rabbitohs and the Broncos have a lot in common on the opposite side of the spectrum, but a lot in common. And then, who was the other team that we did? We did another team that was very similar to someone, I can't really remember. But then, this video, I think the Sydney Roosters, I would compare a lot with the Melbourne Storm, but for the opposite reasons, right? So the Storm have the best spine in the comp for me. They've got Little Malamela Buppy, Ryan Pappenhausen as a fullback, they've got Cameron Munster, they've got Jerome Hughes, and then they've got Harry Grant as their spine. And that's a brilliant spine. But outside of that, the positions of centres and wingers, Will Warbrick was great last year, so I'll take that out. The Xavier Coates hasn't necessarily lived up to the expectations that we had. The centres are a little bit dire. You go into the forwards, and it's not as great as it has been in the past. Obviously, Big Nelson's huge, but, outside of that, you want to see more from Eliesa Katoa. Trent Loiero, I don't even really know if he's the guy there. Sean Blaw comes across and maybe he might get a crack. Josh King doesn't really get it going for you. Does his job, but doesn't really get it going for you. Tuikama Kamita, solid, but nothing spectacular. I don't know, it's just like outside of the spine, the positions don't seem to really have that kind of X factor that we've seen from the Storm in the past. And then you compare that with the Roosters, who, all their other players do seem to have that. Outside of the spine, they do have that, but when it comes to the spine, there is a lot more question marks. So that's where I would kind of make that comparison where they're similar. on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you know what I'm saying. So that's what I'd say there about the concerns for the team going to 2024. That doesn't mean that I don't think they're going to make the 8, and that's not me making a prediction at all. That's just the question marks that kind of reside around the team going into the season. Now, I'll go into kind of their recent record. Now, this was actually something that I found quite interesting when I was just having a look at this. So in 2019, when they won the competition, the Roosters finished in second position with 36 points. The Storm finished in first with 42 points. So that was actually crazy that the Storm didn't actually go on to win that season, because they were very clinically and defined the best team in the regular season and did not win in 2019. We all saw that that was the Roosters against the Raiders. Don't want to talk about that with Canberra fans too much. But the Roosters finished in second. And then you move on to the next season, the Roosters finished in fourth in 2020. You move on to the next season, in 2021, the Roosters finished fifth. You go into 2022, the Roosters finished sixth. And then you go into 2023, the Roosters finished in seventh. So they went from second to fourth to fifth to sixth to seventh. So it's just been a constant drop every single year. And Roosters last year in 2023, for the most part, were actually really, really low on the table. They had to rely heavily on a massive back end of the season where I think they won like 7 games in a row or something like that. So they really, and they had to rely on winning the very last game of the season against the Rabbitohs to even make the 8. You know, if they had lost that, then the Rabbitohs would have made the 8. So the Roosters have been on a constant trajectory of downwards. And that's something that I don't feel like a lot of Roosters fans are really talking about. I guess, you know, Roosters fans and the general NRL community, again, I do think it comes with the name of the Roosters, that they just believe in the organisation enough that they believe that this Roosters team just will be there this year. But they haven't actually given you any backing to support that notion since 2019, when they came second and ended up winning the comp for the second year in a row, mind you. Since that year, they've gone down and then down, down, down. It's just constantly down. So it is very, very worrying. And last year they did make the 8, but it was with a minus 24 points differential, which wasn't as bad as obviously the Raiders, who had a minus 137 points differential. They had 13 wins, 11 losses. You know, it's okay, you know. And again, the Roosters, they feel like they must make the 8 to feel like it's a relative pass season. But I don't think that it should be a pass season for the Roosters. I think if you're the Titans, like my team, or you're a Dolphins, or I would even go as far to say the Knights, you know, I wouldn't say the Eels anymore. You know, definitely the Tigers. These kind of teams who don't have that same success in the past, specifically my team with the Titans, a top 8 season is definitely a pass. It is a successful season because you haven't had that successful backing. But with the Roosters, you need to be expecting a top 4 finish. You know, with the Roosters, with a Storm, with the Broncos, with a maybe not the Broncos right this very second, with the Panthers, you know, those kind of teams, Rabbitohs, those kind of teams have to be expecting to make the top 4. And if you don't make the top 4, it's not successful, because you're not going to see a team outside the top 4 win the comp. It just doesn't happen. I don't even know if that's even happened before. Has that happened before? It's a great question. I don't think that a team outside the top 4... I remember the Eels in 2009 made the grand final. Obviously, that was the year they got robbed and the Storm did cheat to win the grand final, which they obviously has been stripped of. But the Eels did make the grand final from 8th. But I don't know a team that's actually gone and won the grand final outside of the top 4. Now, I want to go and have a look here at the odds for the season, because I guarantee the Roosters are going to be, you know, quite high, considering where they haven't actually shown the reasoning to back in those odds, but they'll back in. The odds will come up in a big time, you know, play. I don't even know kind of if this English is working, to be completely honest with you. Maybe I sound a little bit more Chinese than I do Australian right now, but what I'm trying to say is I think that the odds will be heavily reliant on the team list rather than any kind of previous year, because again, the previous years have not correlated with anything that should be, you know, the Roosters being in the top 2, top 3, top 4 kind of deal. It should be around that 6 through 10 range is what realistically should be the odds provided. But I guarantee they're not there. And yeah, exactly right. So they are in the top 4 here. Well, they're equal third with the Rabbitohs and the Storm. You know, I guess the Rabbitohs have the same notion in a way where they're heavily reliant on their team list. I would say that. Yeah, the Rabbitohs would probably be in a very similar level where they're heavily reliant there. Obviously, the Panthers are heavy favourites with the Broncos being second. I do think the Broncos, that those odds aren't necessarily where they should be based on the fact that Renault's getting a year older. Plus, also, you're seeing play. They're losing a lot of players. But with that being said, I can understand that, right? Based on the fact they made the grand final last year, so a very young roster. But the Roosters are an equal third with the Rabbitohs and the Melbourne Storm. Like, for me, that makes it kind of confusing for me, right? Because the Melbourne Storm, based off of results in previous years, should be higher. Based off of team list, should be lower. But the Sydney Roosters and the Rabbitohs, based off of results in the recent years, I guess the Rabbitohs are kind of okay. Team list plus recent years besides last year is fine. But the Roosters' recent results, no. But off team list, probably should be higher. So, look, I don't know. I find it insane that the Cowboys are as high as they are. They're 6th favourite to win the comp this year. That's wild. The Cowboys being 6th favourite to win the comp is wild. I don't even know what that's being based off of, because why the Warriors below them? Why are the Cronulla Sharks below them? I don't even know why the Parramatta Eels are below them, to be honest with you. That's a really insane odds market there for... Yeah, I don't get that whatsoever. But anyway, this we're getting a little bit off topic here. Point of the matter is that to answer the question of are the Sydney Roosters overhyped in 2024, I don't know. I don't necessarily, and that's not a good thing to say, considering this is the whole point of the video. I don't know. Like, based on recent history, yes they are. Based off of team list, no, they're not. I guess we'll kind of know in the first 4 rounds, and the Roosters are infamous slow starters, right? They suck in the first round. They don't win games many times in round 1. So Broncos fans probably should be happy about that in Las Vegas. Obviously, the Roosters play the Broncos, but we should see what kind of team this Roosters team will be with the quality team list that they have in the first 4 rounds. They play the Broncos in Las Vegas. They play Manly at Brookvale, who should be better this year. They play the Rabbitohs at Allianz Stadium, and then they play the Panthers at Allianz Stadium. And then they play the Dogs and Knights, whatever, play the Storm at Allianz. So the first 7 rounds, they play 5 pretty solid teams. The Broncos, Manly, Rabbitohs, Panthers, and also the Storm. And if you want to go via the previous year of the Knights, you can add them in too. Don't think they'll be as good this year as they were. But the point of the matter is that they've got a pretty tough opening schedule. Pretty tough opening schedule there. So the Roosters, we really should see what kind of team and what kind of aggression this team is going to have to actually get back up and compete with the Panthers in that opening 4 rounds, or you could argue the first 7 rounds. They should, at very minimum, if they want to be a chance to win the comp this year, obviously they should beat the Bulldogs and they should beat the Knights. I would say that the Roosters, based on their team list, realistically should beat the Storm. I don't think that many people are really high on the Storm this year. I wouldn't expect them to beat the Panthers, regardless if that's at Allianz. But that'll be a big one with Spencer Leniu, obviously playing his old team. You can't expect to win against the Rabbitohs in a rivalry game. That's just a 50-50 every time. You should beat the Bronx. You should beat the Bronx if you think you're going to be winning the comp this year, and you should beat Manly. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You should get 10 points out of the first 7 rounds. If you're thinking you're going to win the comp this year. Otherwise, if you want to be just a competitive kind of team, then you'd probably be expecting to be around the 6 points. 3, 4, 6, 8 points. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting this first 4 to 7 rounds for the Roosters. They really need to set up a good platform. If they win 3 out of 4 of those opening games, they're here. They'll be here. If they don't win 3 out of the 4 of their first games, there definitely is going to be question marks on if they are overhyped. But there we go, guys. I think that's going to do us here for today. I hope you guys did enjoy. Obviously, smack that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're new around here. We've got the Cronulla Sharkies draft with the Rugby League Guru coming out tomorrow, which is always good. We love the old Guru. We've got some tier makers coming up with all the position rankings and whatnot. I think there's centres on Tuesday. Maybe 5/8s on Friday. Coaches, I'm not too sure. Can't really remember. But pumping along there, doing it daily. So like I said, thumbs up, subscribe. Appreciate you as always. Comment below your thoughts. This is obviously just my opinion, guys. You are free to your own opinion. I can be a Muppet. I can be wrong. I don't think I am, because it's my opinion. But I am a Muppet, to be fair. I am a massive Muppet, but so are you. But let's get going. Let's rock and roll. I'm really keen for the season. Obviously, we've still got a while away. But at least, we're pumping out content until then. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. See you.